Hi guys, I'm Austin Leak, and I'm reporting on our Week 8 assignment of performing a Title IX self-audit for an athletic program. Coming into this project, I obviously knew a little bit about Title IX process due to the fact that I've been a teacher and a coach for 3 years now, but I didn't expect there to be this much new information that I really didn't know about. The focus of Title IX is on overall program comparability and quality of athletic programs, not exact component comparisons between specific sports. Title IX does not require that male and female athletes receive identical support and services. Instead, it requires that male and female athletes receive the same quality of support and that the program for each gender equally meets the needs of the athletes involved. I think this is the most commonly misunderstood thing about Title IX. I think a lot of people still believe that the only way to meet Title IX requirements is to provide the exact same services to each male and female athletes. This is something I really didn't realize before the assignment. I understood that Title IX dealt with fairness when it came to providing opportunities for male and female athletics, but I didn't understand what exactly the process was for schools to prove that they were in fact in compliance for Title IX law. Alright, in order to be in compliance with Title IX, you have to pass 3 prongs, or you have to prove one of the 3 prongs. These 3 prongs were created to give athletic departments a reasonable opportunity to meet the requirements of Title IX, while also ensuring that their athletic department is moving in the proper direction to ensure a fair opportunity for their male and female student athletes. Schools can choose any of the following 3 prongs in order to satisfy Title IX's participation component. The 3 prongs are as follows. Prong number 1 is substantial proportionality. Substantial proportionality ensures that athletic programs provide athletic participation opportunities that are substantially proportionate to the undergraduate enrollment. Alright, what this means is that the enrollment percentage and participation percentage in athletics should be very comparable numbers-wise, percentage-wise. Prong 2 is the history and continuing practice of women's athletic program expansion. Alright, so even if the first prong of the participation opportunities test, substantial proportionality, is not met, the school will nonetheless be considered in compliance if it demonstrates a history and continuing practice of expanding its sports offerings for women in a manner that has been and continues to be responsive to their developing interests and abilities. Prong 3 is the full and effective accommodation of women's athletic interests and abilities. This is the method by which a school may comply with the participation opportunities standard to fully and effectively accommodate the athletic interests and abilities of its female students in the school. In effect, this requires offering every team for women for which there is a 1. A demonstrated interest in the sport by the school's female enrollment, 2. Sufficient ability among those interested to field a viable team, and 3. An adequate number of competitors in the school's geographic area of competition. While I think that all 3 prongs are sufficient in proving that your program complies with Title IX requirements, I've decided to use prong 1 over substantial proportionality to look into the Bowling Green High School athletic department. Here's a little background on what exactly prong number 1 is looking for. Alright, if the composition of the school student body is 50% male and 50% female, then approximately 50% of the school's athletic participants should be men and 50% should be women. Approximately. This first prong of the 3 alternatives requires only substantial proportionality, not strict proportionality. School enrollments will fluctuate throughout a given school year, as with sports participation, as athletes join teams or quit teams during sports seasons for a variety of reasons. The law recognizes that strict proportionality is simply not a feasible standard by which to measure adequacy of participation opportunities. Yet neither the regulatory language, the OCR, nor any court case has defined a clear rule for how close is close enough. That is, a precise, acceptable statistical variance between the proportionality ratios of male versus female participation. In the Cohen versus Brown University case, as an example, women made up 40% of the student body, yet comprised only 37% of the school's athletic participants, which they declared an unacceptable 11% variance according to the court. Several other out-of-court settlements have established that 5% is an acceptable variance. OCR policy also generally considers participation opportunities to be substantially proportional when the flat number of additional female participants that would be needed to achieve strict proportionality would not be sufficient to create an additional team. For example, in a small high school with a total enrollment of 150 students, 7 of whom are athletic participants, if women comprise 50% of the student body but only 40% of the athletes, then what appears to be a substantially disproportionate 10% variance exists. The key for an athletic director is to measure whether the school's athletic opportunities for women are roughly proportionate to their enrollment if the variance exceeds 4 or 5%, and if the flat variance is sufficient to support a viable additional women's team, to treat this differential as a red flag that a Title IX compliance problem might exist. So 5% variance is really what we're trying to hit here. Another related issue is the question of what is considered to be a sport. Despite many strong and logical arguments to the contrary, current OCR policy is that cheerleading, dance line, pom-poms, and drill team are not considered to be sports. Also, equipment managers, student athletic trainers, and student scorekeepers or record keepers are not to be counted as participants in the sport. Now, let's talk about how Bowling Green High School fits into prong number 1 category. Bowling Green, where I teach, has a school enrollment of 366 students in grades 9 through 12. Out of these 366 students, 187 students are male, while 179 students are female. These stats show that 51% of the total enrollment at Bowling Green High School is made up of male students, while 49% of the enrollment is made up of female students. After gathering this data, the next thing I had to do in order to find out if Bowling Green meets Title IX prong number 1 qualifications is to determine how many of these students participate in athletics. I found that 86 of the 179 female students participate in at least one athletic offering at Bowling Green. So in order to find out what percentage of female participants, I need to take the number of females participating in at least one sport, which is 86. I need to divide that total, and I need to divide it by the total number of females enrolled in the school, which is 179. So I need to take 86 divided by 179. Right, this calculation brought me to 48%. So what that means is the school is made up of 49% females, and 48% of the female population of Bowling Green High School plays a sport. So that's only a 1% variance, which is acceptable. Now I need to find out how many males in Bowling Green High School participate in athletics. I found that 87 of the 187 males in Bowling Green High School participate in at least one athletic offering at the high school level. By calculating the number of males participating in athletics divided by how many male students there are in the school, I found that 46% of males participate in athletics at Bowling Green High School. This is a little closer because that was a 5% variance, which is about the max of what you want. The final numbers show that Bowling Green High School has a 51% male enrollment, and 46 of them participate in at least one athletic event. So that means 5% variance, which meets the Title IX criteria. Females make up 49% of the enrollment, and 48% female population participate in athletics, which means there's a 1% variance, which also meets the requirements of Title IX. One of the things that I noticed when looking at these numbers was how much better the female population was at Bowling Green when it comes to participating in sports. I took a little bit and thought about why exactly the female population is participating in greater numbers. And I think a lot of it has to do with the success that the women's sports programs have had at the high school recently. Track and field and cross country each placed in the state this year. The girls basketball team had a great record, and the softball team actually won the state championship just this fall. This makes it pretty obvious to see why the participation favors the female population over the male population, especially with the struggles that the football team has faced over the last couple of years, which hurts the numbers there. After studying the substantial proportionality of the high school, I decided to dig a little deeper into our athletic program as a whole to see if there were any advantages that certain programs were having over other programs. The two sports that first came to mind that would be very easy to compare were men's and women's basketball, as well as baseball and softball. The things I really wanted to focus on when digging up the information on these two programs were, number one, are the budgets the same for each program? Number two, are the coaches paid the same stipends for these athletic programs? And if not, is there a reason that they're not being paid the same? And number three, do the facilities favor one sport over the other? All right. First, I'll start with men's and women's basketball and discuss those three topics of interest. Number one, are the budgets for these programs equivalent? After doing some research, I found that the men's and women's basketball programs are, in fact, equivalent when it comes to budgeting. Each sport is given a $2,000 yearly budget. Number two, are the coaches paid the same stipends for these sports? The coaching stipends for the men's and the women's basketball teams were the exact same. The head coaches made 18% of the Step 1 salary on the pay scale, while the assistant coaches made 13% of the Step 1 salary. Number three, do the facilities favor one sport over the other? All right, in men's and women's basketball, the facilities are basically identical all the way around. The teams use the same gym and locker rooms and nearly the exact same equipment. The only difference was the size of the basketball, obviously. Besides that, it's the same brand, everything's the exact same. All in all, I think the athletic department does a pretty good job in the men's and women's programs as far as receiving equal and fair treatment. All right, now moving on to baseball and softball. The great thing about the baseball and softball programs is that Coach Dean Street is actually the head coach for each sport. And in my opinion, this makes it a little bit easier to ensure that each sport is being given fair treatment because he's right there to notice either way. Number one, are the budgets for these programs the same? This was a little bit surprising to me. The softball program was given a $2,000 budget, while the baseball program was only given a $1,500 budget. I'd assume there's a good reason for why this is, but it's something I'm going to have to discuss with the coach and the athletic director and see what's going on. Number two, are the coaches paid the same stipends for these sports? Yes, both the head coaches made 14% of the Step 1 salary on the teacher pay scale. The assistant coaches each made 10% of the Step 1 salary on the teacher pay scale. This was also an interesting question to go over. Or number three, sorry, do the facilities favor one sport over the other? This was an interesting question to go over because I know that Coach Street does a lot of the groundskeeper work and maintenance work on the fields, so I knew that he'd know as much as there is to know about this topic. He stated that just this past season, he wanted to do some work on the infield playing surface of the baseball field, and the only way to do this was if he were to do the same thing on the infield of the softball field. So he ended up doing both. He also put a fence windbreaker on the softball field just a couple years ago, and ended up deciding this was something that the baseball field was going to need as well, not only in fairness to each team, but to give the complex a better look as a whole. In conclusion, I believe that the Bowling Green High School Athletic Department was in fact in compliance with Title IX prong number 1 requirements due to the fact that the department stayed underneath the 5% variance mark. Thanks for your time.